Good afternoon, everybody. It has gone 1 o'clock, so thank you, those who are here, and welcome you to this first meeting of Environment Planning and Regulation. And I see one of our councillors walking in, and I'm not sure about the other one. So we have no apologies. Right, so, and I saw Amber coming, so we knew you were walking past. So we have no apologies. Thank you. We have had no declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. So we move to item 3, the confirmation of the non-confidential minutes, which are on pages 5 onwards. Moved, thank you, Councillor McLean. And a seconder, Councillor Fenn. Mr. Zaman was just going to make some comment, particularly with respect to the suggestion around the log island. We just wanted to make that really clear. Thank you. Page 8 of the minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just an update on the, there was a claim that there was a log raft of 5 kilometres and that it was a shipping hazard. At the end of last year, we did put out a press release, but we also put out an alert to all, the Harbour Master put out an alert to all commercial vessels to look for that. No one actually has reported seeing it. It wasn't helpful that we didn't have any coordinates as well, but it's just to report back that we investigated it thoroughly and we put all measures in place, including warnings and messages out to commercial ships, and there was no report or sightings of the log raft.
Thank you. Welcome Helen Montgomery to the meeting. It is your first meeting as the manager of a number of regulatory roles within Gisborne District Council, so welcome. And you may not have met councillors, but you will over time, so welcome. Thank you. Other matters from the minutes? Is there an update on the Mangapoiki Dam and the plan for armouring the spillway? I gather that was to be available.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I have a bit of an update of where we've got to with Mangapoiki. So Mangapoiki is currently in a stable state and it's being monitored monthly. Access to the actual lake itself is currently limited because there's quite a lot of slash that came from the Waituna forest, which are caught up in the willows at the head of the lake. This was after the June storms. We are still waiting for forestry companies to remove this material before the full boat access can actually be restored to the lake. A formal agreement, a formal engagement with landowners and stakeholders is required before any physical works are actually taken to the spillway. And I believe that committee asked where was the funding likely to come from. It's anticipated that this funding will be external. So not borne by us, but there's still quite a lot of work to actually be done to actually look at the course. The provisional armouring design is for the landowner, and they first have to complete reinstatement of the existing tracks at the end of the lake to allow that to occur. Subject to consent and requirements, we will work with the principal landowner up there to try and, for want of a better word, I suppose, scavenge rocks from the debris dam to actually use and place at the outfall for the armouring project. We also have an engineering geology report being completed as part of an MSc project out of Auckland University, and that will be quite informative in terms of the project. And as of December 2018, we have some new aerial imagery, really high resolution that we've acquired as part of the LiDAR project. So we managed to get some funding to pay for that, and we have some detail, also some detailed flight imagery for Palmer and Wainaki as well. So that's really good news. So that's where we're at.
Thank you very much. Item 10.10 talks to us about the water quality in the Tarahere River, and I just asked Mr. Zaman to update us if there was anything on that, what type of project or what we're doing with respect to that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. There hasn't really been too much movement since the report last year in terms of council, but as mentioned last year, we were working with Dan Bloomer, part of the Vegetable Growers Industry Group, on the future-proof veg growing to look at nitrogen inputs into the catchment, and part of that is we're trying to support industry in terms of initiatives that might go ahead, and we're also, and it's possible that we can actually get Dan along to actually have a presentation to committee if that's something that the committee actually wants to hear of the work that's actually going on there. The science team are actually going through looking at the monitoring programs and reviewing those areas to see if we should be better targeting some of the water quality monitoring for their currently undertaking landowners farm environmental planning in the area, but there hasn't been too much work since last report to committee.
Thank you. And then finally on page 11, something that Councillor Burdett is always interested in, I just wondered how we were getting on with the recruitment of staff for animal control.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We've now appointed all the staff in terms of animal control. We have the team leader, Ross is here as well, so can update you if there are any further questions, but we've now made those appointments.
And is that, do you have any further questions with respect to that, Councillor Burdett?
I was in Raw on Monday evening at a Progressive Association meeting. Again, they put a request on the table for a livestock control officer up there. They are still having and continue to have stock control problems. We gave an assurance when we were up there that this matter would be attended to. We were also told that there would be a cattle stop put into the entranceway to the Krakatūwhera River. Since then, the contractor that was firstly given the job has had to pull out because of too much work, and Fulton Hogan's have been contracted to do that. But the issue is stock on the road and people not there to do something about it. I myself, with a friend coming back from the Bay of Plenty, stopped and pushed cattle into, I don't know whose paddock it was, but we put them off the road. Now, the issue, when we spoke last time, and I know there was resistance coming from fellow staff, that Te Aroha needed their own livestock security person. Because of the ongoing problems they have up there, they've either got to come from Ruatoria or Toko, and that's an hour away. So it's, it's an ongoing thing. We've got to get to the bottom of this. We know that there are stock issues. There's been 2 accidents. So instead of the head in the sand, we need to properly look at it. Maybe I should take it to council.
Do you want to respond about the location of any new appointments?
I don't lay it on Nick. I think
No, but it's appropriate that Mr. Zaman responds with respect to any location of new appointments. That's the question, which is effectively what you're asking, Councillor Burdett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In terms of the location of the appointments, there's an office that the staff work out of, and that's where their home base is as well. We would have to look for other accommodation arrangements in terms of setup for the other duties and activities that the staff might actually have to do working with it. And so there are issues associated with that. I would look to Ross for maybe some comments in terms of the actual staff and how they operate. In terms of the wider question, there is a review, and we did promise a report back to council of how the money was being spent and the issues that we've had with the various delegations, NZTA, and I think you'll find that in the minutes there's actually a report back to say that there is a meeting with NZTA in March where they would actually decide. Yes. So I know you've been waiting for that for some time, Councillor Burdett, and that is actually coming back, but part of that is progressing that funding initiative and how we can actually use some of that. But again, locality-wise and geography is very difficult to staff, and I do understand that.
Can we ask Mr., is it appropriate, I didn't want to ask him directly, but Mr. Hanneman, would you be prepared to answer how you'd propose to service Te Aroa and Hawke's Bay? You can come to the table if you wish. Thank you. There's a spare one down there.
Oh, okay, sorry. Through Madam Chair,
Thank you.
for one, to have staff at Te Aroa, we have not had anyone apply from up there. So it's not as easy as shifting someone up there. We also, whether they were appropriate for the job as well, would be another thing that we would have to look at when we're interviewing. As far as the stock on the road, I was at that meeting with Bill back in January. Sorry, Councillor. And I said then that, people need to report it so we can get there and do something about it.
So what you're saying is to actively encourage our residents at the top of the coast to phone the 0800 number immediately. And the more phone calls we get about this, the more likely we are to get a potentially different outcome.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Porrihinger?
And it also sounds like we want to employ someone from the coast that's suitably qualified for the work on the coast. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Madam Chair, yes, definitely someone from the coast. It's not as easy. We're not going to hire someone out of Auckland to send to the coast. That's going to be disastrous for us all sitting around this table.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Councillor Burdett, because it is an issue for you all the time, I think at your community meetings, it's really important that you encourage people, even though they feel the service is still an hour away. The more phone calls that get logged around the issue, the more ammunition we have to make a difference. That's what it boils down to. Yes, we understand that, but we don't want to see. Yes, I understand.
They don't listen. When he's done a good job, 4 people that have been appointed are good people.
Yes. No, we don't want an accident, exactly what you're saying. We don't want someone to be killed. We want to be able to provide a service, but we all know that we have to provide the information to get the numbers up.
I genuinely feel for those ones up there.
I do too,
They get on our case.
and so they should. It's just been drawn to my attention, we have a spelling mistake in 10.10, and it's just the freshwater, it should be the Waipawa catchment plan, so we'll make that amendment, that correction. Is there any further matter? I understand that Ms. Cohere is going to be in here to give us an update on catchment planning at some stage today, further to those last questions. Is that correct?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Coherty can't be here. She's in another meeting, but Ms. Joanna Noble will be able to give us an update, the Strategic Planning Manager.
Thank you. So back to the beginning, and we had a mover and seconder for the minutes, moved Councillor McLean and seconded Councillor Fenn. Is there any other matters arising? If not, I'll put the minutes. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you. So moving to the action plans. Are there matters that you wish to raise? Pages 12 onwards. Nothing from the action plan. Councillor Porrihinger.
I did want to ask in regards to number 3 around stock control bylaw and the NZ, specifically in regards to the NZTA board meeting in March 2019. Is that board meeting still continuing, or is there some kind of upheaval?
Thank you through Madam Chair. As far as I know, it is still going ahead. We haven't heard to the contrary.
Councillor
With,
Hanson?
with the Balance Street issue, there is a bit of ongoing monitoring going on, but as far as my understanding is, it's going quite well, and I think it can probably come off the action sheet.
Thank you. It has say action completed, so we can remove item 2 for the next meeting. That's what you're saying, Councillor Benson?
The
Item
Maria
2.
Solomon issue can come off the action sheet.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Right, we move then to pages 14, and that's the air quality update. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Peter Hancock, who's our acting science manager at the moment, is going to give us an update on the air quality monitoring that we've been doing. We've had NIWA do some monitoring for us across the region, and part of this is to look at do we have our monitoring, we're about to replace our monitoring equipment this year, and it was a bit of an overlook to see have we got monitoring in the right place and what is it telling us. So Peter's going to tell us a little bit about what's actually been done. Kate Sykes, who's actually the team lead who carried out this work, isn't here, so I'm sure Peter will do his best to give us a great presentation.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready to put that animation on. Thank you again. So I'll largely take the report as read, but I did want to show you this animation. This is something that NIWA put together for us, and I just think a picture paints 1,000 words. The whole study that we did kind of boils down to this, and I guess it shows what we all know, that air quality can be quite variable in space and time. So actually, what that means for us is contained in the report moving forward. So,
30th of July, cold day.
yeah,
Was it a very cold day? Did anybody?
the thing we find with it, that it does tend to be correlated with. There's a lot of variables in this. Shall we put it that way? There's temperature, there's time of day. You know, if it happens to be cold when you're returning home, at the end of the day, that's when people will crank their fires up. So there is also particulate matter is affected by sea spray as well. So maybe if you had a prevailing wind direction and from that direction, you could say that part of that could contribute to this. But I think we all know that when it gets really cold and the air is still and the smog from these fires is hanging around, this is where we see the worst air conditions. So the study was really enlightening to show us where the worst spots of town are. Mm. Mm.
It's the wrong time of year during these ones, but would that show up the pollen issues during the season?
It would, but PM10 and PM2.5 are a catch-all for anything that's particulate. So yes, pollen would turn up in that. However, this is during the middle of winter. We wouldn't expect there to be a lot of pollen. But it can be dust off roads, it can be pollen, it can be salt spray.
So this same study can be done in the high pollen season to see what's happening there.
Yes, it could be. The only other thing I thought I'd mention is that given that we are presenting this item at EPNR right now, that we have a press release that we will release today with a summarised version of this, a simplified version for the public.
So you could actually do some sort of studies with health and age, people getting sick around that as well. Would you use this or? Oh, sorry.
Through you, Madam Chair, that is possible. However, that's a very complex subject. I think a lot of this work has been done at a national level through the Ministry for the Environment. The Ministry of Environment tends to lever off international studies and that the World Health Organization has done as well. However, there are some New Zealand specific population examples and their response to air quality. So I think that's probably not something we would tackle at a local level at this point. I think we'd probably look for national guidance on that and advice on that.
It would be interesting. Yeah.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair, I can just add to that. There have been some quite clear studies done out of Auckland and throughout the country, New Zealand, in terms of linking the air quality issues that we have that have been seen around the world, and they are very well publicised in terms of the effects and the correlations between the monitoring and those issues. As we know, there are regions around the country where air quality wood burners and stuff are an issue, such as Rotorua and Christchurch as well. So it can be done, and I think, as Peter said, there has to be some quite close analysis across that. It is difficult to correlate those studies, but there are some very big studies that have been done to show that this is an issue.
Councillor Corrihanger?
I noticed that there were kind of bursts at places like down by Balance Street, at the roundabout down here, Crawford Road, Wainui Road intersection. Are those traffic movements or something like that creating those air quality bursts?
Through you, Madam Chair. It is possible that some of that is created by traffic movements. We did do some monitoring along Wainui Road, and that was the intention, to see what the effect of that is. And it will be combined. As I say, this particulate matter is a catch-all for all of the above. So those very worst nights will be a combination of both traffic and, but I think studies have shown the majority of the acute and chronic particulate matters come from wood fires. There's probably other contaminants of concern that come from vehicles, probably more so than particulate matter.
Councillor Matain?
So following on from that, I was going to bring up about the wrong fuels being used. So I see that treated timber is a bad one. Is Salford wood another bad one, wood off the beach?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not sure I have the information to answer that. Sorry.
But probably more education needs to go out, especially coming on to winter, about the fuels that are incorrect and creating some of this problem.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, again, there has been some national work done on this, and there is a study done by, I read up on in preparing for this meeting, that talked about arsenic and air quality, and how in urban areas that can be due to burning of treated timbers, and that it is possibly an issue we may need to address at some point.
Because you've got some of your intelligent councillors live in this area, so you don't want them affected by this.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. I can add to that. I suppose I've had to deal with a lot of air quality issues in former roles that I've dealt with. So yes, treated timber is a real no-no in terms of burning it, because of the copper chrome, the arsenic in there. And it's well publicised that you shouldn't do that, and it's actually illegal to burn treated timber in some regions in terms of the planning. In terms of the questions for the, burning salt, driftwood as well, high content salt. Yes, there is an issue, because it does create dioxins unless incinerated at very high temperature, and that are some of the issues that needed to be addressed in terms of concerns around the beach burn and getting that sort of information. So when you're burning it inside your house or inside your wood burner, one, it's not good for the wood burner because of the salt and the corrosive effects of it, but it's quite clearly out there in advice around that, not to burn those sorts of timbers. So part of the press release will say, now's the time to have your dry wood well seasoned so it burns well, and there's a lot of guidance and stuff on ministry websites as well, MFE websites, about what should and shouldn't be used.
Councillor Cranston?
Yeah, just in relation to Councillor Farehanga's observation, I observed the same thing. I actually thought, on the basis of what happened in Christchurch and that a lot of it could be geology based, where that area over there, it's kind of held in by the hills, whereas this out here, it's a lot more open. So, I mean, it seemed to, as it came up, it seemed to relate to where the hills were more than traffic.
Thank you. Councillor Stoltz?
Thank you. Can I just take you back to the paper? I had one question and I had to clarify for myself, so I just need to make sure I interpret it correctly. On page 15, where it talks about the breathing small particulate matter is harmful to humans, in paragraph 6, it states the generally larger PM and in between 2.5 and 10 micrograms, whereas the finer fractions, that's wrong. It should say smaller than 2.5 micrograms. It says they're bigger than. So it should be smaller than paragraph 6. Am I reading that correctly?
Thank you, through Madam Chair. Yes, you are, Councillor Stoltz. It's the smaller fractions, and what the paper discusses. So PM10, as Peter said, there's a lot of interference in terms of that. So you can have salt spray, dust, and a lot of other bits happening. The Ministry for the Environment, as the paper says, is actually thinking about bringing in PM 2.5 standards, those smaller fractions, and you will see the report actually talks about. Gives some diagrams of that. The PM 2.5 standard has been brought in around the world, in other places, in other countries. So what's been great about this initial monitoring, as it were, is that we've actually been able, with those small low-cost monitors, to monitor the 2.5 and sort of get a benchmark on it should MFE bring those standards in later this year.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? So the report is for noting. Thank you. Thank you. Moved Councillor Stoltz and seconded Councillor Forrihanger. All those in favour that the report be received, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hancock. So at page 24, an update on the catchment planning. Thank you, Ms. Noble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms Kohiri can't be here today because she's actually in a joint governance group meeting for the Waipu Kokahuhua, which is occurring just next door. So the timing isn't quite right to provide a detailed update on the Waipu catchment. We have both the joint governance meeting happening today, and then we also have a meeting with the contractor, Tina Pro, who's been engaged by the Runanga to work on both implementation of the joint management agreement and also the Waipu catchment planning process. So while I realise it seems that nothing has been happening, progress is being made, and just the timing of this meeting with those other two meetings means we can't provide a full update on Waipu, but we will definitely have something more to report next time, and we will also investigate having Ms Parau come and present to the council on the work she's undertaking with the whānau and hapu of Waipu. So back to the report. Hopefully it is fairly self-explanatory. It's a snapshot of what's been happening around the council to do with freshwater work and also catchment planning, including the new integrated catchments team led by Dr. Murray Cave. So really here to take questions. I believe that there were some questions.
I'll just see if the committee have any questions, having read the paper. Thank you, Councillor Dunn.
I just wanted to follow on from what Councillor Burdett's been saying for months in terms of your joint governance group for the Waipu River. Why are there no landowners involved with that group? Where are the local representatives on the ground?
So the
outside of iwi, MPI and council.
So the joint governance group represents an accord signed up to by those Crown entities and us. So that's why the landowners aren't represented as such. Although having said that, there is a presentation today from Hilton Collier, who has made an application to the Provincial Growth Fund for a number of works in the catchment reflecting, as I understand it, the landowners' perspective. So it's not that they're not involved, but they're not included at a governance level because they're not part of the accord.
Technically, they are part of the accord because they are council in a sense. It just seems funny that the people on the ground who are living in the catchment don't have a core role to be playing in such a vital project. And I mean, Councillor Burdett's been talking about this for a long time. Is there any ability to get representatives from the people on the ground involved in the governance group, even though they don't represent those three entities?
So through you, Madam Chair, we're just currently looking at slightly reorganising. So we have a governance group, which is the governance level, and then a more operational level. So that will be the forum where representation at an operational level, whether that be staff in the council or landowners, can feed into the process and then feed up to the governance group for decision making.
Yes, Councillor Burdett.
Amanda, you raised the issue and I'm going to follow through on. For a long time I have been saying we are our stakeholders, the one that pay the rates, because these other organisations don't. And we seem to be dealing with them at this level, and the landowners are over there, apart from mine sitting here at a table at a committee meeting or council, in total ignorance. And Kapai Hilton going to this meeting today, he'll wind them up. Good on them for employing Inapro. She's an expert in her area, which is environmental issues, water, fresh water, the whole works. But I come back to the point I made when I started. Why are we bypassing our stakeholders to listen to these people? Because I can tell you, I live up there. I've got 6 or 8 miles of river, both sides. And I ain't gonna let some third party out there speak for me. And just so you understand, the reality of the situation is the Runanganui and Hapu don't speak for the farmers or the landowners or the business people. They speak for us tribally, and they speak for us socially, but they don't circumvent that and say that they suddenly get into bed with the council and we'll tell you what's going to happen. No, that's not how it should work. And David did give us a commitment in September last year that we would meet with the stakeholders, both sides of the river. I would think, given all the publicity of late, that's being actioned very shortly. So good on you for coming here and making a report. Kate told me she's going to this meeting, and good on her. At least there's some action happening, Madam Chair. There is something happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to make a small observation. All these pieces of, when I read this and I got to page 28 where that beautiful diagram is, it's the first time that I felt that things are falling into place. We've had all these separate pieces of work happening, all good work in their own way. But when I saw this and I could see how everything fits together and also lines up with our freshwater plan, I was really heartened by that. Going forward, it can only be good for us to work in such an integrated way. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a question with respect to the work that is, and Councillor Dunn is aware of it as well, and I think went to the meeting with going on in the Waimata. So, and that's really good work being led by a group outside of council. So how are we going to integrate that into council's planning as well? Because we don't want to not take advantage of the enthusiasm that there is in the area for the Waimata to develop up a catchment plan. But we need to be doing it so that it actually meets what the requirements are for council and takes both urban and landowner representatives with us in the development of that catchment plan. So can you tell us what's happening there, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just respond to that as well.
Sure.
As Councillor Stolz has just said, there's quite a lot of work going on in terms of ECFP grants, funding, land management actions, the NPS freshwater as well. And what staff are really busy working on at the moment is actually making sure that all these various pieces of work align with a strategic direction in both the NPS, but also some of the funding streams that are actually happening. So it's not a case of trying to exclude landowners as well, but we haven't really set some of the framework. And yes, there's a question about the governance level and who might attend that. Part of the work that staff are doing with MPI through the Provincial Growth Fund and the funding agreements is actually setting those framework levels. And this is a first attempt to sort of put a lot of that work together, because there's a lot of really good work, as the chair has said, going on in the Waimata catchment. And it's linking all of that work together along with the new integrated catchment streams that we actually have some joined up plans going together to deliver on that work. And that's what this is about. So if there's anything you'd like to add, Joe?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. In terms of the Waimata in particular, so that has been identified as one of our at-risk catchments. So the integrated catchments team is leading a program of work, working very much alongside the landowners and the people interested in the catchment to look at what their current needs are, what the risks are, particularly looking at erosion risk at the moment, and looking at the most appropriate way of managing those risks to the river, and also funding opportunities to get some positive action towards restoration of the catchment, and then that will all feed into our planning work. So we're working very closely, the planning team's working very closely with both integrated catchments and the science teams. Hopefully, as this report reflects, we're trying to work together rather than isolation.
So just supplementary to that, on page 28, could we expect then to see where we're looking at options for Motu and Uawa, which are both, particularly Uawa, have been doing a lot on work on their own. Would we expect to see Waimatar in there too?
Yes, it will make its way in there over time as we, make our way through the process. So at the moment, we're working with the landowners, and the integrated catchments team are leading that project, and then strategic planning will come in and as we move into the catchment planning phase, and Waimata will appear in that box.
All I can say though is that they're very active up the Waimatar, and if we don't keep in touch and working with them, they're likely to get ahead of us.
And that's exactly what the integrated catchments team are doing, and keeping us very much in the loop as well as that progresses. So we don't lose sight and the interest and the enthusiasm.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could, I'm trying to comprehend what at-risk catchment means. Because we only have a tiny part of the Motu River in our council jurisdiction, whereas we have the Waimatar that runs right through our city, and as that project recognised, has the capacity to take out 2 rivers which carry electricity, water, wastewater. So when we talk about at risk, I'm just wondering what we're talking about. If you're going to do it by at risk, then the Waimatar probably should be at the top of the list.
So through you, Madam Chair, the at-risk catchment concept is something that comes from the Ministry for Environment and is linked very much to water quality. And the reason that the Motu scores as an at-risk catchment as well as the Waimatar is because of the activities that are occurring in our part of the region have the potential to have a serious adverse effect on the downstream part, which has a water conservation order over it.
Supplementary. Just because the ministry says what an at-risk catchment is, doesn't mean that we as a region have to say that that's our at-risk catchment. It doesn't mean that the priorities, we could still say possibly as a governance group that actually we want the Waimatar to be the highest priority catchment. Can we? I don't know, I'm asking.
Thank you through Madam Chair. So the at-risk catchment, as Joe's pointed out, is central government level. There's been a lot of, and those are the catchments that maybe just are at a tipping point, and where you can do that. But the priorities, certainly the priorities are for council to determine what where the work programs go into those catchments. So just in the Waimatar, Laura Savage, as you know, our Senior Land Management Officer, is working on drawing up the actual project plan for that, and identifying funding options, and working on some more community engagement work, workshops, and there are a number of options open through the 1 Billion Trees program to secure some of that funding and work. And that's where the link in is coming through between what's actually happening on the ground in terms of the integrated catchments team and the higher level sort of strategic objectives in terms of fitting into those programs and those bids, so that they're actually all joined up for those. And certainly on the ground there, as the Chair, Councillor Seymour, has said, there's quite a lot of community will and some offers of free planting and trees, both for private landowners and also for some of the community-based projects, and we're trying to enable those, but being joined up.
Thank you. That's good. Thanks very much. Are there any other questions? If not, could we have someone to move receipt of? Thanks, Councillor Dunn. Seconded, Councillor McLean. The recommendation is on page 25 to note the contents of the report. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you very much. And that's our last item. We move into public excluded simply for the minutes, Mr. Jones, so we're not chasing you out. We've moved into public excluded, moved Councillor Stoltz, seconded Councillor Fenn. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. And the resolution for the minutes was moved Councillor Stoltz, seconded Councillor Cranston. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary carried. Is there anything from those minutes? No. Is there any general business? Thank you, councillor
I don't know,
Burdett.
this is, I don't know, this is
Oh, can we move out of, is this in public or public excluded?
public.
In public. Councillor McLean has moved. We move out of public. Councillor Porriting has second. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary carried. Thank you.
I've just come to seek clarification in terms of whether it's this committee's responsibility or which committee I can be directed to, because you've heard me bang on about those dollars that are there for the protection of Ruatoria. The 3 engineers that put that scheme in place and did an excellent job have all gone. So we've lost that expertise, but my request is, can someone within this organisation cost out what it would be to put those dollars in the river as they were meant to be? They're paid for under the Ruatoria Protection Scheme. There has been talk about on-selling them. We've managed to stop that. But those dollars have been sitting there now for 5, 6 years. As I said, they're part of the Ruatoria Protection Scheme. All I want is clarification. Which committee or full council should I go to seek that this be done?
Well, it's not just this be done. There need to be some engineering assessment of exactly where they'd be put into the river so that the cost could be established. Would you like to respond? And then we can give clear guidance to Councillor Burdett. Is he bringing it back to us from an environmental perspective or back to council?
Thank you through Madam Chair. It's my take would be that they're actually assets that the council owns. That's really an engineering question in terms of where that should go. So the appropriate would be actually back to council, but certainly not to this committee in terms of the cost and the use and the engineering structural use of those.
So council or assets and infrastructure?
I'll have to check. There was a report that was brought last year. I think it was August 2017. Well, Neil Dakin actually took a paper to council on that. I can get that confirmed. Which committee, or would it be more appropriate to have it as council as it's an asset? And I do realise that it was meant to be considered with sale of land to NZTA. I am aware of that, Councillor Burdett, and you've informed us that that's not going through. I'm not sure if that deal is really over, but there needs to be a check on that.
Councillor Fenn?
Just on that, thank you, Madam Chair. So how, just so we know, as support of Councillor Burdett, how are you going to confirm that? By what avenue? Via email to Councillor Burdett or action sheet, is it?
Yep, through Madam Chair, it can be an action for us to confirm what committee, and we can put that back either through the committee chair as well, so that the committee knows beforehand.
Didn't want to talk about it and gets lost.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further business, I declare the meeting closed and thank everyone for their attendance. Thank you. See you all tomorrow. Indeed.